that you're entitled to, because we all know that you're not making the big bucks with VISTA. So we want to make sure that you get everything that you're allotted. So bear with us, roll with us here. Mara's obviously not here because she's on vacation. Also use your vacation benefits because self-care is important and balance is important, and you have like a month and change left. So use them because they're important. So to make this less boring, we're gonna show pictures of Chris and I's pets, because I think that there's nothing that makes a really dry presentation more compelling than seeing someone else's dog or cat in a picture. So
animal.
You're welcome. Yeah, or wild animal, or trash raccoon, as my cat is. So yeah, buckle up. If you've got questions on this stuff, drop it in the chat. They can be kind of weird benefits, and so we want to make sure that you guys feel comfortable with them and that you're ready to roll with them when they start to unlock. So if you've got questions, drop them in the chat. We'll try and address them as they come up. Otherwise, we'll loop back and answer them all at the end. Cool? Cool.
Speaking of wild animals who decided to climb up and try to break everything, give me one moment. All right, so let's talk about interest payments. So basically the main portion of this benefit is that AmeriCorps can pay for your interest accrual over the course of your service term. However, this is taxable income, and it unfortunately can only be accessed after you complete your service term. So because of the pandemic, I know that I am also in this boat that my taxes, or the taxes on my student loans, did not accrue because someone decided that we shouldn't have to pay taxes on on those loans. So so we don't have to worry about that as much this year. But in that sense, you have this benefit to be able to, in this event that eventually stops, you'll be able to, and if you decide to serve another year, you would still be able to access that for the interest. You'll be able to have that interest paid for by AmeriCorps. The other thing is this is also taxable income. So when you do eventually do this as well, this is taxable income, and that could affect how your taxes will be done for the year that you decide to do it. Also, make sure you do the interest accruement first before you use your education award, because that can also cover that money could also cover a lot of what your loan or whatever you're paying off first, because both those things are taxable. And if you try to do everything at once, it's gonna make it a huge utter complication. I have made that mistake. Don't be like me and have to call CNCS, be like, I cannot have this happen. I cannot having called my tax person, be like, or having to go a tax person, be like, what do I do? How do I pay for all this? What is going on? It is not fun. I fully recommend trying to blocking out as much of it, or not blocking off, but making sure that you kind of what's the word? Stave off, or break it up into parts. That way you're not paying this huge amount of money on taxes later in the year. Next slide, please.
Yeah, that will come up. And one other finer point on this too is if you're a previous VISTA that you've served, even if you served a little while ago, you should still be able to apply for this. So if you, last year when we did accrue interest on student loans, if you were like, man, I didn't even know about this, which if you were in our program, you should have. But if you weren't in our program, keep an eye on this and you should still be able to apply. So you should, again, be able to do the same deal of going into your My AmeriCorps portal, creating the interest payment request, putting all of that in. I have heard of people doing it 3 or 4 years at least out of service, and it's still gone through. So that's super dope. And again, that's money on the table. So you've all been VISTAs for a year. That's the number one rule is never leave money on the table, because turns out when you don't make that much money, it's really critical. The other touch point on this too, again, just to reiterate what Chris said, do the interest accrual payments before you do anything with your educational award, because that will, otherwise there's a good chance that your ed award can apply to the interest payments. And that's silly because, again, money on the table. So just friendly words of advice is that if you're interested in doing this, do this first. It should be accessible like as soon as you complete your term-ish. They all, for reference, and this is a true thing for everything through here, it all unlocks between like the day that you end your service term and like 6 weeks after, because it's CNCS and things can be very slow. But if you're interested in this, check it out and do this kind of before you do anything else. So go ahead, Chris.
Sure. Next slide. So the next kind of benefit we have that is you either chose at the beginning of the year is that you have the cash stipend, which is directly deposited into your last living allowance check. So you get this option either that you chose at the beginning of the year, or if you're like me, who have served 2 years directly with AmeriCorps, I am now allowed to get the education award because I have served for 2 terms full. So that total should be about $1,800, and that is given directly to you via your last living allowance check at the end of your service. So the last paycheck that you guys receive when you finish service. Also, all of my cash money is going to my cat, as you can obviously see. So now we're going to kind of go a little bit more in depth about the non-competitive eligibility. So this is a benefit that starts immediately after your service is ended, and it lasts for the entire year that you use it. It doesn't necessarily guarantee the job, like a guaranteed job for like in a government building. I will answer that question in just a minute, Sierra, but basically it gives you a kind of like a leg up in terms of like other positions, because you technically did work for the federal government, but as I'll point out later, you are not technically federal employees. So when you fill out a federal, like if you start to like fill out a job at the federal government, you cannot list yourself as a former federal employee because you weren't technically employed by the federal government. We partner with the federal government, if that makes sense. Can we move on to the next slide, please? And then, and Sierra, to answer your question, you can use the interest payments. Hold on. So you're asking. Go ahead, Meredith.
So I think the answer is no. But CNCS has also changed a lot of things, and so based on the fact that there was very little interest accrual this year, right? They may have offered some flex, but typically it applies to your service term. So they'll pay essentially your interest from like, if you started August 30th, right? They'd pay that full August 30th to August 30th of the year. But I'll look into this and send a follow-up note to you guys, just to make sure, because again, it would really be unfortunate if you left money on the table. So I'll call VISTA case and see what they have to say about interest payments. That's a really good question.
So again, kind of like some of the benefits we have for non-competitive eligibility is that we have a very significant advantage in the hiring process because we have that benefit where it's like we don't necessarily have to compete to get into that position. It's a faster hiring process because we have that benefit. We're able to like kind of go through like we skip the background check, we skip like a lot of major things that a lot of the federal government does for a lot of other people. But because we have that non-competitive eligibility, we kind of have to, we get like a little bit of a skip in the line, sort of like we're like, or think of it as like an amusement park. You have like the normal line of people who like to go to the roller coaster, but we have the fast pass and we can go past all those people. Also, because a lot of hiring managers like it because it speeds up their approval of when they can hire us specifically. So like if you are like looking in a federal position, like looking into a federal position, because you have that non-competitive eligibility, you're able to be kind of pushed to the front of the line. You're able to have the interview with that person, and then that hiring manager or committee will be able to say like, yeah, we really like this person, let's get this person hired. And then that process goes by super quick. So where can you find jobs that can use your non-competitive eligibility? So a lot of it is using your networking skills to try to find like different groups that would be able to do non-competitive eligibility positions. There are a lot of, like, you can also look on USA Jobs, the Vista Campus Job Board. Also, just advocating for yourself if you're ever in a situation where you think that it might be beneficial to have that. Basically, there may not be people who understand what the non-competitive eligibility is. So making sure that you like mention that in some way and kind of explaining what that is may help you in the long run when you are looking at jobs like this. Other online resources are Government Loop, Go Government, and Service Year Alliance, and the link for Service Year Alliance is right there on the screen. And we'll also be sending a copy of the presentation to you guys at the end of this, so that way you'll be able to have a better way to look at this as well. So we talked about how you should advocate for yourself, on like how do you explain that you have a non-competitive eligibility in a resume. So I have this really good example from a former Vista who did this presentation a year ago, and they put in this, like their dues and accomplishments related. So like they put the list of their skills, and then they put at the very bottom, non-competitive eligibility status gained as a result of the VISTA service. So putting that in your resume does kind of put it right up in the front for when someone is hiring you. And then they may ask you what that means if someone who already knows what non-competitive eligibility means, that's a good way for them to realize that, hey, this person has this benefit, and it might be a good idea to like maybe look into this for some further, or move on to a second interview, or whatever have you in that sense. So that way a employer knows that you have that benefit. So just a quick, like a couple of frequently asked questions. So one of the questions is, I'm serving for 2 years. Does that mean I get 2 years of non-competitive eligibility? Unfortunately, no. It's only for 12 months following the completion of your service. So even though I've done 3 years of service for AmeriCorps in general, I only have, unless I choose to activate that benefit. So once I finish this year, I may choose to use this non-competitive eligibility. That's only good for 1 year. And and also Meredith, thank you for mentioning that in the chat. You will also need to print out a letter of verification, which is also available on the AmeriCorps portal, which will allow you to show, like, this is kind of gives a bit more of a broader explanation of what the non-competitive eligibility is for employers. So having that on you as well is also really good as well. And then I mentioned this earlier, am I considered a federal employee as a VISTA on federal applications? No, do not list yourself as a federal employee. You are not considered a federal employee, even though we do have like a lot of the limitations of the federal government. We don't technically work for the federal government. We partner with federal government for a lot of this. So we are not federal employees.
It's literally the best or the worst of both worlds, I guess, is really what it is. So whatever. So this is kind of a niche one, but if you relocated to serve, so Olivia, we're very specifically thinking of you at Florida. So if you received a relocation award, so if you got like that settling in allotment that was like $600, $500 when you started, they also, paid for your travel to your host site. If you're one of those people, you're also eligible for a relocation allotment for your close of service. So their deal is essentially we'll get you to and from AmeriCorps and pay you. So you don't actually have to be traveling back to wherever you started from, but AmeriCorps kind of will do their due diligence to give you the opportunity to go back. So if you receive the relocation benefit, you're eligible for the end of service one. So the gist is, go into your My AmeriCorps portal and look at your home of record. So your home of record is kind of whatever your like permanent address is. Often it's your starting point where they calculated your benefit originally. They'll pay you 40 cents a mile from your host site to your home of record. So again, at Florida, good one to keep an eye on. But even if you transferred or if you moved, from Wisconsin or from elsewhere in Michigan, it's a really good thing. Again, it's money on the table. So that should be available 15 days-ish before the end of your service term. Fill it out. I would recommend as soon as you remember it, fill it out, like put a note on your calendar, just fill it out. because it can take a while for processing time. It'll go in your direct deposit. So you'll just like at some point get a direct deposit from CNCF for whatever that funding is, but keep an eye on that. VISTA case or the VISTA member support unit may reach out to like connect with you about that, but likely it's a pretty easy process. It's pretty straightforward. You can see here, so you're going to go into the My AmeriCorps portal. You're going to go to the My Travel Request profile, and then you'll see all of these like random travel requests. You'll probably have a starting service relocation. You're going to hit Create Profile, and then you're going to go down here and hit Ending Service. It will then do a bunch of other things. It'll self-calculate things. You may or may not have to fill out a little bit, but it should be pretty straightforward. It's 5 minutes, but it's, you know, it's some good money, and it's a good kind of like random surprise when you get your, eventually you get your direct deposit. So yeah, keep an eye out on that. They say it takes up to 10 weeks. I think that I got mine like a month or so after. So it's like everything in CNCS, everything varies, but make sure you do this. I believe that you can't apply for it after you end your term. So I would recommend that you do it as soon as possible. Again, just to make sure that you get money in your pocket. So the big one we really wanted to talk about and make sure that you guys had some tools and context to make sure that you know what's up is about the education award. So this is the alternative to the cash stipend, right? It's the $6,000-ish such the federal Pell Grant that you get after your service is done. So couple things to let you know about. One, that money is set aside in a federal National Service Trust. So regardless of what you see, you know, there were some questions, especially in past years, about AmeriCorps budgets. They were often zeroed out in budgets. Regardless of what happens, know that your money is sitting in a trust and it's for you. So if you don't use it in your 7 years that you're going to be allotted to be able to use your service award, it'll go back, but it is set aside for you. So don't ever worry about it, you know, being cut for funding cuts or whatever. It's set aside. So it's going to be accessible in your My AmeriCorps portal a couple weeks after service. Again, this is one of those, I've had people that have said it was eligible and available like 2 days after they ended service. I've had people that have spent a couple weeks. If you're really concerned about it, you can contact the VISTA member support unit and say, hey, what's the status? That may or may not move things forward, but they might be able to get you some extra information. So the education award is intended to be used for either qualified student loans or at any eligible educational institution. So any four-year college eligible, any federal student loan eligible, but it's also eligible for a lot of different things. So we've known people that have gone to culinary school, that have gotten trade certificates, that have done like outdoor adventuring certificates and stuff. If you're interested and if you're like, man, I want to do something really wild with my education award, let me know and I can connect you to a couple different websites for that will show you the eligibility of different programs, just to make sure that, again, whatever you're putting your education award to, it's actually eligible to be paid for. So the general gist on usage, you've got 7 years to use all your awards. If, you know, 7 years from the time that you end service. If, you know, it's year 8, you don't have an award anymore. Regardless of whatever, you know, you have left, it's on the table, it goes back into the pot. It can be used for your educational expenses and not others. That's different from, I believe, state and national, where I think that there's a way to essentially gift your education award to family members. Not the case with VISTA because there's an alternative in the cash stipend. So just keep that in your brain. You can use your award in kind of any level of portions. You can use it all at once and just say, screw it, I'm done. Or you can break it up and divide it over the years. Education awards are taxable the year they're used. So if you use it as soon as you exit service, it's taxable in the year 2021. You're going to fill out, I believe it's a 1099. You're going to fill out a form. It's going to go on your taxable income. That's a key part that we're going to talk about a little bit. And then a reminder, if you're using the interest payments, obviously it's not super pertinent this year, but we want to make sure that, again, you know this, do that first, then do your education award. So here's a little gist. Okay, we'll do the overview first. So here's how you do the education award and how you create the education award payment. Again, you're in your My AmeriCorps portal. That's where all of your payment things are going to process. So for reference, if you need to print a non-competitive eligibility letter, if you need to, do travel award stuff, if you need to do interest payments, it's all in your portal. It's all about as straightforward as AmeriCorps can make it. So it's like a 5 out of 10 in straightforwardness, but it's pretty good for CNCS. So you'll go to My Education Award. That will show up and that will be like interactable. Again, as soon as your education award is authorized, essentially. So that's a couple days to a couple weeks after service. So you're going to hit Create Education Award Payment Request. Your payment type is going to be like a loan payment. Your institution is whoever's going to hold your loans, so not the school. So this is paying for your specific student loans. It'll be the same, except obviously shifted if you're going to pay for current education. So payment type will either be, I think it's like loan or current educational expense or something. Obviously, you'll pick whichever is applicable. For institution, it's going to be whoever's holding your loan or whoever the actual institution school is. So remember this. We're going to send you this slide. Refer to this slide when you're going to do it, just to make sure that you're doing it correctly so that you're not paying, Michigan State for your student loan, because that's going to be really awkward. So essentially, you do this, it will send that loan payment to your lender. Again, you can do the different amount authorized. You can authorize all of it. You can authorize $600. You can do whatever you want. But you're going to do this, and then it'll take a little bit to process, but it shouldn't be too long. I would also recommend you reach out to your lender to confirm that they've got it, confirm it's in the right spot, confirm it's applied the way you want it, that kind of stuff. Because again, when someone else is paying things for you, it can get weird and complicated. So I would really recommend. All right, so let's very quickly talk about paying for school. And then we're going to talk about some tips and things about that, of how to make sure that you're getting the most out of your educational award. So when you're paying for future tuition, be careful about over award status. So that's essentially when schools, and you college access vistas know more than I do, so if I'm wrong, yell at me, please. But schools can only pay for the cost of attendance, and they can only offer financial aid up to that point. If you use your education award, the exact amount is, I believe it's $6,125. Chris, if you want to validate that, but I believe that's correct. It changes every year because it's set to the federal Pell Grant. I think that's what it is this year, though. It's within $100. But so watch over award status. So if you use all of your education award at once, you could lose aid for your education. Essentially, you could be put into over award status. The school will say, "Oh wait, we don't need to add this $6,000 that you just gave us for your education. We're going to take that financial aid away." So the key for this is two things. You should fill out the additional financial information section in your FAFSA if you haven't already, or if you're reapplying for your FAFSA. And you should also make an appointment with your financial aid office and tell them that you have an education award. Most of them know what that is. If it's not, let them know. And that you don't want to lose any aid, but you want to be able to use your award. They're typically pretty good about working through it. Sometimes the right answer is that you take on that debt and then you pay it off very quickly with your education award. Sometimes the right answer is that they can shift things around. Talk to them. They're smarter than I am. But be careful about this, because again, it's a pretty easy way to lose money and leave money on the table, because you're going to lose aid. If your financial aid doesn't cover the full cost of tuition, you're probably fine. But again, it is. That's pretty high. I like it. 6,125 must have been last year. But anyway, so keep an eye out and be careful about this, and talk to your financial aid people. Talk to people that are smarter than I am, and be open about this and be very clear about what you want to get out of it. So talking about, there we go, student loans. There are two ways to do lump sum payments on student loans. There's the advancing your payments, where it will just apply to the next handful of payments that you've got. That's typically what lenders will do if you just send them a lump sum of your education award. Typically, they'll just apply it to your payments. You know, you might get out of paying a few months of payments, or however you know, many payments that your education award covers, or how much the portion of your education award. That's how many payments it'll apply to. But the other option is paying down the principal. Typically, you have to contact your lender for this, and I would recommend that you do so. But you can ask them to essentially apply your education award directly to the principal of the loan, which will pay directly to the amount borrowed and not the interest. So you'll pay down your loan much quicker, especially right now. Obviously, we're not paying interest right now, but that's the key. And that's a thing that I would recommend regardless of whether interest payments are existent or not, is you can pay to the principal. This might take some time. You might have to call your loan company a couple times. It's recommended that you ask for a written confirmation because, again, things in writing are a good thing, and it's more complicated because you're never actually touching this money. So again, take this with a grain of salt. You do whatever you need to do. But there are two options. This one might be a little more complicated, but it's often recommended to pay down the actual principal. And there's a little bit of elbow grease in it, but it may be worth your while for it. So general advice there. Again, regardless of where you do it, I would recommend contacting your loan company and saying, hey, there's this lump sum coming my way. Did it go to the right spot? Are things good? Because I've heard of education awards kind of getting lost in the mix sometimes. So general advice for free, because free things are good. So a couple touch points that I think are important about taxes. Again, we're not professionals, so talk to someone smarter than I am, but here's some general gist. Anything over $600 is taxable. So in theory, you could pay $600 once a year with your education award, but turns out with the 7-year maximum for using the education award, you're never going to be able to use the full education award with just paying $600 a year. So at some point, you're probably going to have to pay taxes on this. Unfortunate, people are really advocating in Congress to make sure that the education award isn't taxable, which I think is great, but is not what's happening right now. So look at taxes. Often it's better to spread out the award into a variety of years to minimize the tax burden, but it can depend on your situation. It can depend on your tax brackets, that kind of stuff. Again, do what's right for you, but often it's not a bad thing to spread it out into multiple years. Again, you can often prevent the over award status if you're paying for current education, but you can also prevent getting hit with a pretty significant tax bill, which multiple people, it's reasonably common actually to accidentally get a pretty ugly tax bill with the Siegel Education Award. So be careful about this, because it would really be unfortunate, right? If you use this $6,000 that's really great and really awesome, and then you had to pay like $1,000 in taxes, because that would suck. So be careful about this. Often it's recommended to spread it out. You do you. Often it's recommended to use it while you're in a lower tax bracket. Again, like your VISTA service year. But again, you do you. Tuition payments can sometimes be tax deductible. Again, talk to someone smarter than me. But look through your options and how to make this the best, how you can minimize your tax burden, because it's a really great benefit, but it can also get really, really ugly. So keep an eye out and be cognizant of it. Know that it's taxable. Know that anything over $600 is taxable, and think through it and think about what the correct timing of your education award is. That goes for kids going to grad school and law school too, for VISTAs going to grad school and law school too. Keep an eye out. Using an all-in-one lump sum is not always the best option. So all that to say, I'm not a tax professional, and you shouldn't listen to me on these things, but these are general recommendation advice. So any questions about the education award or usage or anything about the Ed Award? It's pretty straightforward, but you know, if you guys cannot end up with a giant tax bill, that would be super. So cool. All right, if you've got any questions about that, or if it pops up towards the end of the year or whatever, if you're thinking about things, let me know. VISTA Campus also has a lot of good resources around this. So look into it and do what's best for you. Cool. All right, any questions about any of your end of service benefits thus far? I'm gonna pause for a minute just so you can type, or unmute yourself, you do you. You've heard me talk for a long time. Okay. If you've got them, drop them in the chat or unmute yourself and be like, stop, and we'll go through them. I know super dry, but also it's money, and money is important, and I want to make sure that you don't leave it on the table. So we'll go through this, and you'll probably receive some emails from VISTA about some of these things, but keep in mind all this stuff. We're going to send you the PowerPoint, but put it on your calendar if you're like, man, I need to reach out about random things. Olivia will connect on travel questions, which I bet you probably do have questions. So cool. Again, a lot of these things unlock after your VISTA service is over. Don't ever hesitate to call the VISTA member support unit or the National Service Hotline. If you Google National Service Hotline, it'll get you the number. And yell at them, or gently yell at them, or have questions about your end of service benefits. They're often very helpful. Lindsay, that's a good question. So Lindsay got an email from AmeriCorps saying that they're raising the living allowance by like $1,000 a month-ish, effective, not $1,000 a month, a grand total, effective in August. So do you qualify for that or not? Yes, but only for the time in which you're serving after they increase the living stipend. So your last like paycheck or two may be a little bit bigger because that will go into effect. It's a weird amount of math, and our operations director is doing it soon based on when that goes into effect. So the short answer is yes, but like not enough to be great. So likely the last couple paychecks will be slightly larger. For those of you that are serving past that, September 1st mark, your last 5 paychecks or something may be a little bit bigger. So yeah, often AmeriCorps will do an increase in living allowance dollars. Normally they do it around July, but because of the American Rescue Plan, it's a little bit later this year. So that's where that comes in. So yes, and sort of. But yeah, so we'll send out a note about that once we have a little bit more of a handle on exactly what that'll look like. But for your reference, keep an eye out for the last, like probably your last paycheck, maybe 2 paychecks to see like a little bit of a bump. And again, friendly reminder, if you offer, or if you chose the cash end of year award, that will go in your last paycheck. So if you get like a $2,000 paycheck or something, it's not because you got like a really great living allowance benefit, it's because you got $1,800. So, all right, any other questions about end of service awards, paychecks, that kind of stuff?
Hi, quick question, not related to really end of year service stuff, but is there an easy way to know how much PD money we still have?
There's an easy, yes, we'll send you a note. That's the easiest way for us. We have a spreadsheet, but it's not super accessible for VISTAs. So yeah, if you're curious about PD, please let us know. And if you have a PD and your PD allotment is done, but it's really cool and you're really interested and you can make a good case, let me know, and we'll probably still be able to grant it. Friendly reminder, use your PD. Even if the PD is like a little bit after your service year,
What's
if you can
PD?
get it in and get it approved. Professional development. So you get specific professional development funding if you put in a PD request form. So Hakeem, you should put in a PD request form because it's like a couple $100 that you can spend on learning stuff.
Bet.
So yeah. So if you've got PD, or if you've like got some things, even things like books that you want to learn about your community, put the request in. we're pretty amenable as long as you can get the request in and we can get it fulfilled by the end of your service year. That'll be good with us. So, friendly reminder: use your vacation days and use your professional development. That's super. It's money on the table. Again, this is the theme of our entire webinar: don't leave money on the table.
Thank you for telling me that, because I got a lot of it.
Yeah, dude. We'll send you the PD request form. I'll drop that in our webinar follow-up so that it's easy. But it's also, I believe, on the website.
Damn. Was that Lindsay that had asked that question?
I think it was Olivia.
Olivia?
Yes, it was Olivia.
Olivia.
Thanks, Olivia.
I like it. All right. Any other questions about anything aside from housekeeping, which we're going to go through in a minute? All right, so housekeeping, couple due dates. So July 20th, our last field trip with the MAID Institute. It's a good workforce development field trip. It's super dope. We're really excited to learn from them. So if you're interested, please sign up in your weekly update. We'll also send out an email about that. I don't know, I'll probably feel some stuff.
Meredith, your sound isn't working. I don't know if it's just me, but I can't hear you.
Yeah, Meredith, we cannot hear you. And if you would like, I can take over from there if that's the case. So like Meredith was saying, that we do have our field trip with the MAID Institute on July 20th. Are you back, Meredith? Or not? Okay. So we have the MAID field trip on July 20th. There is a link to the weekly update to register for that field trip. We will also probably put that in our in the reminder of the webinar. Your July timesheets are due on July 30th, and then your last quarterly progress report is due on August 6th. We should have that open. We'll have that open probably in the next couple of weeks, but keep an eye out for that. Also, by August 6th, all the end of year paperwork is due. So pretty much everything that you have on the AmeriCorps portal site, where it is your future plans form, the program evaluation, I believe, is from us, and then the VISTA member end of year evaluation. The last two things are from us specifically. So your supervisor will be getting a copy of that, and make sure you send that to us. Send that to us by August 6th. And then also we have the end of year celebration the 2 days before that. So we will probably most likely remind you of that as well. Also, and then a little bit further ahead of that, we're gonna try to do the barbecue where it's open-ended, but we're gonna meet everybody outside, hopefully. And I believe that's August 13th. Correct me if I'm wrong,
Yes.
Meredith. Okay.
Can you hear me now? Am I back?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
I have nothing. Whatever. So yeah, thanks, Chris. I appreciate the screenshot. So yeah, end of your paperwork, you just got an email about that. So did your supervisors. So please get that stuff in by August 6th. For us, it's really critical that we get that early so that we can exit you from the program on time, because that would be really unfortunate if we couldn't. So again, if you've got questions about that stuff, let me know. But I believe all of it's attached to that email, with the exception of the future plans form, which is in your AmeriCorps portal. And then again, a week before you exit service, up to a week, turn in your last timesheet. Don't turn it in super early, because we want to make sure it's accurate, but turn it in before you leave, because we don't want to be chasing you around being like, darn it, Roxanne, where's your timesheet? So please turn that in ahead of time so that we're not chasing you around your last day.
Is our last date the 17th?
It is the 16th, I believe, for
Okay.
most of you.
Some may be
but
16th,
not
some may be the
always.
17th. It depends on when they served or when they started service.
Yeah, it's older Vista. Yeah, it's weird. And if you want to see how many vacation and sick days you have left, email your Vista leader / email me if your Vista leader's Mara, because Mara's on vacation. But Lindsay, we can give you the updated formula for your sick days. And we'll give you the updated information on your sick days, because that is pretty important. So yeah, that's what's due. Again, please let us know if you've got questions about your end of year paperwork. It's pretty critical that we'll do this. We're also, for reference on that email, there's a little point where you can fill out a form with your permanent mailing address. It's pretty critical that we also get that so that we know where to send your W-2s next January, or that we know where to email you to confirm where to send your W-2s. So for that form, it's going to ask you for your permanent mailing address, your personal email, and your personal phone number. Please give us the email and the phone number that's like most reachable to you, not the email that you made when you were like 7 and you never checked, because it's like all the spam emails. So give us your real email. We're not going to spam you or anything, but we'd like to be able to email you to make sure that we're sending your tax forms to the correct place so that you've got them. So yeah, that stuff, we'll go through that again. We'll send reminders, but please fill those out because it's really critical to our program and to making sure that, again, you guys don't have to scramble during tax season. Sound good?
Charisma
Cool.
also has a really good question about legacy binders, and when are those due?
Yes, that's a good question. Legacy binders aren't ever officially due. We don't ever need to see your legacy binder, but it's really critical that you build one and continue to build one and do a good handoff with your host site. So we would obviously recommend that right about now, probably the first week of August, you're really doing a lot of legacy work and turning over all your projects to your host site, especially if you're leaving and especially if they're shifting from Vista service. It's really critical that you do a really solid transition to make sure that your work stays for longer than your service term. So no official due date, but we'd really recommend that your last month of service or so, you're spending a lot of time doing those handovers, bringing people to meetings that you've gone to, giving them information, making sure that your work is in really solid footing to continue. Does that make sense? Dope. All right, last reminders, Chris alluded to them too. August 3rd, which is a Tuesday, is our end of year presentations and then the keynote. So you all should have gotten, knock on wood, a package from us recently that contains a book, which is entitled Reading with Patrick by Michelle Kuo, who is our keynote speaker. So Michelle is really dope. She did Teach for America in the Mississippi Delta. This book is about essentially her service, but then coming back to the Delta and working with students that she worked for before. It's a really good read. I read it before. I think I was actually serving at the VISTA. It's a really good book. It's a really poignant book about what it really means to make a difference, about what it means to serve a community. It's really great. It's about, it really centers on like the intersection between racism and poverty and education in the Mississippi Delta, and it's great. She's a really dope person. We sent a little bit of a biography, but you can Google her too. She's really cool, and we're so excited to have her speak to us during this presentation, or during the keynote. So we'd really recommend that you read the book throughout the summer if you've got some time. It's super dope. I think it'll add a lot of context to her discussion and her thoughts. So please read it. If you, for some reason, didn't get that package, let me know. We have spare books, like 1 or 2 of them. So hit me up because I think it's really critical that you get one. And we've got them. So again, please read if you've got time. It's really cool. A couple of finer points. I sent a note about this last week, time is a flat circle, I think last week, about your Human Centered Design presentations. But again, just a gentle reminder, they're like 5-ish minutes per individual presentation, 10-ish minutes for the group-based presentations. The gist is, what did you do? Why did you do it? What did you learn? And how did you incorporate the people that you're serving into this? You know, how did you actually center the human in your design? The gist is to catch everybody up on the cool stuff that you guys have done throughout the year. Pictures are always recommended, especially if you are a host site-based project that has a physical something. Take a picture, hold it up during your presentation, show it around. You'll be able to access PowerPoint and share your screen. So we'd really recommend that you've got some visuals, because it's really boring to hear people talk to you for an hour about random things. Case in point, this last hour of your life. So recommended that you make it interactive and fun. I think it's really cool. It's really cool to see what everyone else has done for their year. So highly recommend. If you've got questions, talk to your group, talk to your VISTA leader, talk to me. If you've, if exhausted every other option, let me know and we'll work through it. But be prepared for that August 3rd. And then August 4th, we've got a virtual cohort activity and reflections. So that'll be super stoked. We're sending you guys a package, probably, I'm looking at my office calendar, the last week of July is realistically when you'll get it. So that's going to contain a journal for the reflections, some stuff for the cohort, office Olympic stuff. And then we're also going to send you a VISTA backpack that we're ordering soon. As a heads up, we got a better deal. So you're all going to get red ones if you're okay with that. If you have a vehement hatred of the color red for your backpack, let me know and we may be able to make some level of an exception. But, it's a good deal and it's a way to be a good steward of our dollars. So keep an eye out for that. It'll probably be a pretty big package. So let me know. As a heads up too, because we're sending things, if you're moving, if you're like, man, I'm moving for school, or my lease was up like August 1st or something, and I might be shifting, let us know, because it would really suck to send a pretty big package that would cost a lot of money to buy and to send to a place that you don't live anymore. So if you're moving, let us know. Don't just fill out the form. The form is very helpful for your permanent address. But if you're moving, send us a note so that we can make sure that we're sending you things correctly. So friendly reminder on that. And then August 13th, there's going to be an in-person barbecue. It's like pretty for sure happening now. It's like for sure tentative is where we're at. But it's optional, but we'd really like to see you guys. We'll be providing food and we'll cover your mileage there and back. So if there's any way that you guys can make it, please attempt to. We'll send out more information when we have it. We should be solidifying some things there. It's likely going to be like an early afternoon thing, is where that will run. And probably will be like 1 to 4 or something, noon to 3-ish. We're likely going to rent some sort of a pavilion in some sort of park in Lansing. And we'll buy you guys food and we'll bring cornhole and we can hang out and actually see people's faces, because again, friendly reminder, none of us have seen each other's faces, with the very exception of like sometimes VISTA serving in specific sites and stuff like that. So I'd like to see your all faces. If you've got any questions or if you're concerned about that leading up to that, let me know and we can do our best to mitigate any concerns you've got. But yeah, so put that on your calendar. Again, we'll probably be sending out more information shortly about that, but make sure that that's on the list. So there we go, canceled. Any other questions, any other concerns? As a heads up, we're not going to do an August webinar because we'll be at our end of year celebration. And also because it'll be like a week before you guys end service, and that seems like a lot. So any other questions about service, heading towards the end of year celebration, any of your benefits, that kind of stuff? Anything that we can cover? Because if you've got questions, I'm sure someone else does. Nothing? I don't think so. Okay. If you've got questions, please let me know. Be sure to send me an email, because likely if you've got a question, it means that I forgot to address something and other people have questions, or didn't know that they have a question, but they're going to be like, man, that was a really good question. So let me know if we can do anything to support. We'll send out this webinar and we'll send out these PowerPoint slides. Again, please reference them. There's kind of some weird CNCS and AmeriCorps things in them. So feel free to use this as a tool. Make sure you're not leaving money on the table. Make sure that you're not leaving anything on the table that you can get as a benefit, because that's really critical. So excellent. I will see you guys at the very latest on August 3rd. We'll send out some more information about Zoom and the order of people's presentations and that kind of stuff shortly. But I'll see you guys soon. And please let me know if you've got any questions in the meantime. Sound good?
Whose idea was to schedule
Question.
thing for 8 o'clock in the morning? I'm sorry, I'm not a morning person, and you know, I can make it, but I'll be, you know, like going off camera to eat breakfast kind of thing.
That's very fair. That's very fair. We might shift it to 9. We'll have to do some level of like roster math to see if we can make it to 9. Hopefully we can, knock on wood. But yeah, June will go last. Let me know if you're not a morning person. We'll put you lower in the roster. Let me know if you're like super a morning person, because you might be batting first. Yeah. June will get to like 11 and then she can go. We'll be good. I like it.
Thank you.
No, that's a good point. That's a good question. Anything else we can touch base on before we jump off? I like it. All right, excellent. I hope you guys have an excellent rest of your week. Let me know if we can do anything to support. Again, I'm looking forward to a great last like month and change. I hope you guys are too. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Have a good rest.